Welcome to People Doing Good for Others, where we celebrate and praise and hold in the light those who are truly making significant contributions in our communities. I'm Gary York, and I'm grateful to be here, and I want to thank Wilkes Communications, River Street Productions, and WIFM for this opportunity. And thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you today. My special guest is Senator Shirly Randleman. She's a Wilkes County native. She's given 43 and a half years of her life to making a difference in our community. She's been our clerk of court. She's been in the state house and now is a senator. And I know her to be a public servant. And good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning, Gary.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
What did our senator do yesterday?
Yesterday, I attended a group meeting over in North Wilkesboro where the Health Foundation is talking about trying to make those people in the area have healthier foods, healthier lifestyles, and possibly a new way of cooking those meals. Also trying to figure out how we can provide transportation because many people in the area do not have adequate transportation.
Okay. Your start as a public servant, go back to, just give us, let us hear the journey, if you will.
I will do that, Gary. Thank you. I started my career in the court system in 1971. That was shortly after court reform. So Wilkes County was the last county in the state to go under court reform. So in February of '71, I went into the court system. I remained in the court system until my retirement in August of 2005.
Okay. Just a little bit about the clerk of court. What do you do?
The clerk of court, I would categorize as the person who acts the guardian for the public, because there's a balance in the judiciary, and the clerk's responsibility is to make sure that that balance remains and that everyone has equal access to justice.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
So you were elected 3 times?
Yes, sir. I was first elected in 1994.
Okay. So you went home,
Yes,
and
sir.
you felt a need to be more productive than you had been for a while. And what happened one morning when the phone rang?
Oh, I was at home, and I would get up every morning and I would check my emails. And on this particular morning, I checked my emails and I had received notification that our state representative, Tracy Walker, was considering retiring. And in a split moment, I went into our bedroom where my husband was still asleep, and I said, Ronnie, I hear that Tracy Walker may be retiring, and I'm going to be running for the House of Representatives. And we never discussed it again, and I began my campaign to be elected to the North Carolina House.
And how long was this campaign?
I campaigned for probably a year and a half.
Year and a half?
Yes, sir.
What is a campaigner? Just kind of get up in the morning and maybe have an assignment, or there's always something good to do.
Yes, sir. I usually keep a very detailed schedule, so I know where I'm going to be on that particular day. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing that day. I know when I need to be buying signs. I know when I need to be putting signs out. I know when I need to start my advertising. I'm a very scheduled person, and I stick strictly to that schedule.
Senator Shirly Randleman is honoring us today with a few minutes, and what an interesting moment in my life. And we shared earlier that knowing the law, that you gained that from being a clerk, has helped you immeasurably in your service as a House member and a senator. Tell us about that.
Yes, sir. As working in the court system in the clerk's office and as the clerk, my duties involved implementing new legislation. Anything that the legislature passed, then we were required to implement that legislation. I was required and felt a duty to inform the public on what the process was, what the law said, and how it applied to what they were wanting to do. And then also, as the clerk, and the clerk being the judge of probate, and in other areas such as foreclosures, partitionings, and those types of things, the clerk presides over those, so I was responsible for enforcing the law. So you implement, you instruct on, and you enforce the law.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Senator Shirley, tell us about, then you went from the House to the Senate. I want to know, I'm going to ask you some specific questions. When we talk about long session, short session, what does that mean?
During the long session, that usually runs from January to somewhere 1st of July. And what we do in the long session, that is when all the members have an opportunity to file bills.
Okay.
So you get if you have proposed legislation that you want to bring forward, you would have your bills drafted, you would get your bills filed. That is also the year that we do the in-depth budget, to where we make any appropriation needs. You have the base budget, but then we have adjustments that we make, and that is when we can expand the budget expenditures. So that is a very involved period of time. And it is probably the most contentious and the most complex period of time in the General Assembly. But it's a busy 6 months. I chair currently the Appropriations for Justice and Public Safety. I chaired that committee in the House. I also chair that committee in the Senate. I chair Justice and Public Safety Oversight, and I also chair the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
A day. I know there's no normal day or regular day, but just give us some idea. What time do things start? Like 9 o'clock, or you might go to 12 o'clock at night? Or tell us about how a day might be for Senator Randleman.
We have scheduled committee meetings. So during those scheduled committee meetings, you're also meeting with constituents. You're meeting with people who come by your office to talk to you about different pieces of legislation. So I'm usually in my office on a given day before my assistant is there. So I'm normally there in the mornings, unlocking my door, making sure that we're prepared to do business. Normally the committee meetings start around 10.
10 o'clock.
So by 10 o'clock we are starting that schedule. And some days you may have more than one meeting at a time, and you have to, kind of shift from one to the other and make sure that the one that has the most pressing needs, that you're in that committee meeting.
Okay.
A session is usually around 2 o'clock. So we go into session, and whatever is on the calendar for that day.
Does that mean all of you together?
Yes,
a
sir.
session? Okay.
That would be all of the Senate members, all 50 Senate members. We go into session, we hear whatever bills are on the calendar, and we are in session until we finish that daily calendar. And we don't take breaks. If we're waiting on the House on something, there may be a time period that we have a delay. But generally, once we go into session, we do not have breaks. We do not do anything but concentrate on what's at hand on the calendar for that day.
And you told me the first thing every morning you do emails.
Yes, sir.
Tell us, that's how you're in touch with your folks, your
Yes, sir.
constituent?
Yes, sir. I have my emails on my cell phone, and I also have them on my computer. And the first thing I do when I get up in the mornings, I check those emails to see what is there, because I know if there's a constituent in my district that's having an issue, they will contact me through that email. If they don't have my cell number, then they're going to email me.
Right.
And, it could vary from people having road issues, people having issues with the Department of Revenue. It may be people having issues with getting adequate treatment. It may be people that need to be placed in a mental health facility. It can vary. So I scan those emails every morning to see what is going on with the people who live in the district or outside of the district, because we get emails from outside of the district too, and then I began trying to address what those needs are.
I was so interested in a story you told me about Dr. Bill Blackley, and just casually made a statement. Tell us that story.
I became acquainted with Dr. Blackley because he is very involved with the Mountain to Sea trails.
Sure.
And right now they're trying to connect the trails in Elkin with the trails at Stone Mountain, or take the trails all the way to Stone Mountain. So when I was down walking the trails, some of Dr. Blackley's colleagues started talking about the needs for signage on Interstate 77. So I asked him to tell me about it, and he was saying how they had tried to get signage, could not get signage to Stone Mountain. And so I took on the project and I said, let me see what I can do. So I proceeded to contact the DOT. Within 10 days, it was confirmed that they would start putting signage on I-77 and that they would have it done within a matter of months, which I thought was great. So
Mike Pettyjohn, you said,
yes, sir, Mike
took
Pettyjohn.
personal responsibility for it.
Yes, sir. So then when I contacted Mr. Blackley, Dr. Blackley back, he said, we have tried to get this signage for 25 years. So, it took about 2 weeks, and by 3 or 4 months later, those signs, they were erected, and also the signage on 21. So now people traveling 77 or 21, they can see the signs directing them to Stone Mountain. And the park rangers at Stone Mountain say that it has made a significant improvement in attendance at Stone Mountain. Wow. Yes, sir.
You talked about a staff member, and there's one. Tell us his role.
Right now, I have one staff member. His name is Jeb Kelly, and I have another position also for a legislative assistant, but when we're during the interim, I have not filled that position because I feel that my research assistant and I can handle whatever comes up. So Jeb came on with me in 2013. January 2013, Jeb came on with me. And when I interviewed him, I learned that he had graduated law school in May of 2012, that he had passed the state bar in July of 2012. And every year before the session starts, I will have a conversation with him about what his plans are, because I know he has greater potential than working in my office, but he always says, I'm staying with you. So I am very, very honored and pleased.
So you're a team?
Yes, sir. We are definitely a team. Yes, sir.
Okay. We discussed 3 primary goals you have as a servant in your time in Raleigh. And you talked about funding education. Go through those for us, if you will.
I will. One of the things is funding education, and it's not only funding education, it is adequately funding education. And right now it's on everyone's mind when you send your children to school every day, you want to know that that child's going to be safe in the classroom.
Yes.
So I think that is a top priority, and I think it needs to be addressed. Now, what the end solution will be, I'm not sure, but I do know that it is something that it's on everyone's mind right now. And, what I have encouraged our communities to do, with us out of session, is to go ahead at the local level and start having those conversations. So parents and concerned citizens need to know what the rapid response plans are that are already in place.
Yes.
They need to know when they send their child to school that morning that that child's going to be safe until it returns home that afternoon. So that is number one. The other concern for me is the issue of mental health and substance abuse.
Okay.
We have a growing demand for services in our area. I feel that until we begin to address those issues, our needs are only going to continue to grow. We have more children that go into foster care. So it has a great economic impact on all of North Carolina. And we need to do what we can to address the issues of mental health and substance abuse and also address the needs of those children. The third thing is it has become increasingly difficult to attract law enforcement, either at the state level, the local level, law enforcement, emergency management, with lack of respect in those areas and the constant growing liability that those officers assume when they put the uniform on. It is becoming very difficult. In 2016, BLET dropped 40%. That is basic law enforcement.
At community college?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So we have to come up with some plans to attract not only law enforcement, but also emergency management. And that is something that I'm working on, and I will have a proposal that will be filed in the upcoming short session.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Senator Shirly Randleman is sharing. We also talked about the correction system and how maybe it needs a little attention. Yes,
sir. I think most people have read the news and they know that in 2017 we lost 5 correctional officers.
One day.
Well, four were killed in one day, and we lost 1 in May.
Yes, okay.
And that is a concern for everybody in North Carolina. But the demographics of those inmates who are incarcerated now, they're different. They are your worst offenders, and they truly do not have respect for the officers or the staff that's in the prisons. And I think we have to make sure that the officers, the support staff, they all need safety devices and equipment that they can feel safe when they walk into the prisons, and that will ensure their protection.
Okay.
So we are working on that. We've been submitted a proposal somewhere in the $20 million range to address the needs of safety devices in the prisons.
Senator Randleman, you are in District 30.
Yes, sir.
The new realignment will be District 45. Will you share just an overview of the counties versus what it is and what will be?
Mm-hmm. I can do that. And the whole issue of redistricting is based on population. So using the 2010 census, for each district you have to have at least 180,000 people. So, it can be 5% plus or minus. But the magic number is 180,000. So the counties were broken into pods, which our pod goes from Caswell County to Watauga County. And in that pod, we have slightly less than 400,000 people. To have 3 members in that pod, we would need 540,000 people. So we're about 140,000 people short. So the composition of Senate District 45 will be Allegheny, Ashe, Watauga, Wilkes, and half of Surrey. That will be the new 45th, and that is the district that I would be running for re-election in.
And there's a twinkle in your eye when you talked about winning and campaigning. Most folks wouldn't have an idea of how that works. Just tell us about loving to meet people and developing relationships and getting back and those things that really matter when you're a public servant as you are.
Yes, sir. I try to stay close to the people because I think in staying close to the people, that's how you understand what their needs really are. And when you get out and campaign, it gives you an opportunity to truly meet people. So I am everywhere that I can possibly be, and I never have a shortage of time when people want to talk. So I'm always open. I always have an empty ear for them to speak to, and I take what they say at heart because that is how you become a good public servant. And I do not classify myself as a politician. I classify myself as a public servant.
Last Friday at noon, tell us, and you promised to be in WIFM's office at 2 o'clock, and at 5 minutes to 2 you walked in the door. What had you been doing at the partnership, the economic partnership?
The Surrey County Economic Development Partnership had their annual meeting in Dobson at the community college. So Commissioner Chris Chung from Economic Development, he was there. And there was probably, I would estimate, 150 businesses that met that day. And I think being open to the concerns of the business community, making sure that we address the needs of the business community, and growing jobs, because those businesses that attended that day, even though they may be small businesses, we have to rely on those small businesses to create jobs in rural North Carolina.
Senator, you are significantly involved with education. and the community colleges. Let's talk a little bit about, is it Wilkes in Surrey, and Wilkes has an office in Allegheny, and just the impact of a community college. I'm so inspired by it.
Yes, sir. You know, the campuses for Wilkes, you have the one in Wilkesboro, and then you also have a campus in Ashe and Allegheny.
Ashe and Allegheny.
And then you have the Surrey Community College, and they have a satellite office or a satellite campus in Yadkin County.
Yes.
So, you know, for rural North Carolina, when I'm in Raleigh and I drive around the streets of Raleigh, on every corner, you will see some institute of higher learning. But when you come back to rural North Carolina, that is not the case. And our students, many of our students, they rely on the community colleges. And 2014, I was very privileged to go with 5 other Senate members to Germany. And the intent, well, I think 2 of them were from the House. The intent of that trip was to look at career technical education, because all students may not be headed towards an academic career at a university, but yet they have skills that we can lead them into a career technical education path. So we have developed those paths, and they have been instituted in North Carolina to give these young people a future, a career, and hope. Because I think that is the key word, is hope. And we've just had a young man who graduated the animal science program at Wilkes Community College.
Yeah.
He was hired immediately by Tyson.
Oh my goodness.
And he went in making somewhere in the mid-50 range of salary.
Right.
So, and I think the stats now show that kids coming out of community college.
And that was right here in Wilkes Community College.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And we know now that kids are coming out of community colleges, and they are starting out making salaries as much as those kids coming out of universities.
Wow. So you're significantly involved in farmers.
Yes, sir.
Supporting farm issues. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, you know, I think if you look at the data, Wilkes and the surrounding counties, we rank 3rd in the state for agriculture, or for the income from agriculture. And I get a lot of emails from farmers, and I try to be very connected with the farmers. And I had one farmer email me recently, and he has a large operation, and he was telling me how, rather than getting his product to market, that a lot of his trucks are sitting on the side of the road for the DMV to see if they can find his DMV sticker. So, you know, I found that a little troubling. So last year in the Farm Bill, I was able to change the law that the ag vehicles now, they do not have to have the little DMV sticker.
Right.
So that way those trucks can keep moving, they can get their product to market, and it actually improves our community overall. So I think it was a good thing.
Does a senator have an office in Wilkesboro or Wilkes County? Do you have an office?
I do not have an office. I had an office when I first started for 2 years. I didn't have very many visits, so I realized that that was an expense that I probably should not incur.
So you have a budget the state gives you to operate?
No, sir. That was out of my funds that I kept the office open. But the town of Wilkesboro,
yes,
they are very gracious in allowing me to use space anytime that I need to meet with a constituent.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about going to Raleigh. You had short session, long session. Now, is long session on even years or odd years?
Long session is on odd years.
On odd years. And it'll be 6 months, and then you'll be back home?
Well, we are back home, but then we go into what is called the interim. So during the interim, we all have committee assignments, and I actually have 8 interim assignments. So I am in Raleigh 1 or 2 days a week now in those committees. And as I said earlier, I do chair some of those committees. So we are very busy even in the interim.
Tell us about seniority, how do you move up? Tell us so a layperson could understand it?
Well, I think it's, your time there, and I think it's how you engage yourself.
Okay, engagement.
Engagement, yes, sir, because if you engage yourself, I think people see that, and I think a lot of it's based on experience. Because if you have experience in particular areas, you can use that experience to help with legislation, to help with committee meetings. You keep the needle moving.
Okay, so you're the face of the 30th district right now, and it will be the 45th. You're the things you do, everything that we're doing there matters, or everywhere. But
yes, sir.
When you're on the floor, when you are on time, when you are answering phones, answering emails, all those things matter.
Yes, sir. And I don't know that you and I talked about it, but I've been in the General Assembly 9 years.
Yes.
I have perfect attendance, and I don't know that there's anyone else in the
Wow.
General Assembly that has perfect attendance. So I pride myself on being on my job, being on time, and getting the work done.
Senator Shirly Randleman, I want to thank Wilkes Communications and River Street for this opportunity. It's been a real asset in my life to have the opportunity to be with people that you're just really clear about your focus and the role that you play, and that you are a public servant. So,
yes, sir.
As we close, your gratitude for these 43 and a half years that you've loved every minute of it, I can tell that.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about how that works for you.
Yes, sir. It's very humbling to know that you have the confidence of those people who elect you. I've been through elections since 1994, and on any election night, it's just extremely overwhelming to know that those people put their trust in you, and that never leaves me on a daily basis. It never leaves me, because I realize that I am responsible for now 180,000 people. So it is very humbling. I'm always appreciative of the support that I have. And I try to be the same person from one day to the next. And I always tell people, what you see is what you get. I'm not going to, pretend to be somebody that I'm not. I'm going to always be the person that I am. And I just am very appreciative for everyone's support and confidence.
And the Lord's blessed you and your family in a special way and given you the energy and the vision and to do a good job, and I'm grateful you're there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Senator Shirly Randleman, the senator today for the 30th District in North Carolina. This election this fall will be 45. She's a 43 and a half year servant. She's been in the House, she's been in the Senate, and a person who truly matters in our communities. And Wilkes County is grateful to have this opportunity for her giving, sharing, and caring. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Come again.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you.